Okay, so my name's Gavin Francis. I'm a doctor and a writer. I work here in Edinburgh, and I'm here to talk about a book called The Bridge Between Worlds, A Brief History of Connection. Yeah, so the idea of the book is that each chapter is a bridge and a way into thinking about the people, the communities whose lives that bridge transformed. And it's a kind of memoir of restlessness, 40 years of journeys, 2,000 years of bridges, 25 chapters, all 6 continents. And it moves all around the world, looking at everything from sort of Brooklyn to Bosnia, Singapore, Siberia, lots of European bridges, but just looking at how bridges are a kind of symbol of connection and collaboration and cooperation between people, and how we need more of that in the world today. Oh, well, as a Fifer who now lives in Edinburgh, I would have to go with the Forth Bridges. Yeah, because I live in the light of those bridges. And for me, they stand as kind of metaphors for the possibilities of humanity when they get together. So, you know, we could still be using the ferries. There was a ferry until 1964, but people got together and said, no, this is worth putting money into to make the lives of future people easier. And that metaphor, you can extend it to so many other things. So there's so many other things we could be putting money into now that would make the lives of future generations easier, not just in terms of peace building, but also in terms of climate. And even the word metaphor means carrying a cross. And so bridges for me are the perfect metaphor for all the things that we can do to ease the lives of the future generation. Yeah, it was a very clever title. As thinkers, as writers, this is a gathering of great intellects from all over the world. It's one of the most wonderful things about it. And to have all those people come to one place with the idea of sharing their ideas about the future, I think it's great. In terms of the tension of the time that we're in, that's really obvious, just in terms of political divisions, and also in terms of, as I just mentioned, there's concerns about what we're doing as a society to the earth and how we pull that back in time to help save it for future generations. So tense in lots of different ways, but the focus on the future I really value. What I really love about this year's festival is the fact that the Royal Infirmary, this old building, was built in the heart of the city to serve the people of the city. And for years it's been boarded up and inaccessible. And now suddenly it's renewed, and it's renewed in this completely different form. It's like a phoenix coming up out of the ashes, and it's so open now to the city. Everybody knows this building. Everybody's got memories of this building, but they have them in that sort of negative way to do with you would go there if you were ill. And now it's opening up as a kind of public space for people just to come and experience and use, but also as a place to gather minds to share ideas, and the cross-disciplinary idea of that is very strong. And it's very strange for me because I trained here as a doctor in the 90s. I was a medical student here. And so these corridors that we walk around now, that I go and see my favorite writers and listen to my favorite writers, these are the exact same corridors where I used to trail around in an overstarched white coat behind the consultant or the professor just 25, 30 years ago. Oh yeah, so many. I mean, for example, just to let you know, the authors area where we sit now and meet our chairs and meet the people we're speaking with, that was surgical outpatients. And so I remember going to clinics there when I was a student, right there where we now eat our lunch, and learning about when you needed to amputate a gangrenous limb, for example, or learning all about which lumps need excised quickly and which ones you can reassure the patient and leave them to it. So it's lovely to be in that space in such a new manifestation. And similarly, I worked for quite a while in the A&E department at the far end of the building, which is now a cafe and restaurant. And so some of the most intense emotional experiences of my professional life are in there, both positive and negative. People really hovering between life and death who were saved, and people who didn't get there in time and who weren't saved. And so that place is so thick with memories for me And to be there and see it in its new guise is really, for me, kind of heartening. And it shows me that buildings can evolve and have new meanings, and the city can gain a new meaning from this place. It's been preserved for another 100 years or more in this new form. Well, I've always been a great reader. As a boy, I loved science, and I couldn't decide what I wanted to study. At first, I actually wanted to be a geographer because I loved atlases. They were my favourite books. But I gradually realised that I wanted to study the human body. I wanted to learn how to be a doctor and use that to see the world and to map the world in a way, both inner and outer. And I've always been a great reader of fiction. But what I find actually is that as I get older, I read more and more fiction. At the beginning of my writing career, my first book was published in 2008, when I was just in my early 30s. And at that point, I wanted to write the book that I would most pick up in a bookshop. I wanted to write a book that I wanted to write the book that would most appeal to me as a reader. And it's funny that as time has passed, actually I see the power of fiction more and more in terms of changing patterns of thinking, in terms of proposing thought experiments, in terms of imagining the world in new and better ways. So it plays a really central role in my life, literature. I am a doctor half the week, and half the week I spend writing. So I have a very kind of split gaze between the problems of humanity and human bodies and human minds and the easing of suffering, and this wonderful realm of words and literature and ideas where anything becomes possible. And they're very different ways of looking at human life, but I find them very complementary. They're kind of like the left and right eye that gives you a depth of field in your vision, or like a left and right foot that gives you a steady gait. And putting the two together and easing between writing and between medicine, to me, is something that gives me great strength and balance and stability in life. I don't think I could do without either. When I review a lot, and when I review, what I do is I read the book and I scroll all over it with a biro, thoughts, criticisms, praise, things that I love, ideas, and then sections that I want to quote, and then I type them all up. And then I end up with a document that could be 3,000 words, could be 6,000 words, and I might be writing an 800-word piece for the Observer or something. But I have to distill that all down in a very critical way. As a chair, it's completely different, because my role is to make the authors look good and give the audience a good time. And so I'm less interested in criticizing the book than in finding interesting angles on it. So I do the same. I read through it, scroll all over it with a biro, but when I scroll, my scrolls are questions that appeal to me or that occur to me, or things that I'm curious about the author or about the process of the way the book was written. And so it's quite straightforward for me. I just do that, and then I type them all up, and I end up with a couple of sides of A4 of closely spaced questions, of which I manage to get to 4 or 5 in an hour's event. So I always over-prepare, I always have far too many questions.